So in the past, say 4 or 5 years, I've seen many of my students some are kind of monastic students from Asia with traditional monastic education, as well as some are kind of heritage students, what we might say kind of coming from a Buddhist family, and then they want to engage with Buddhism or Buddhist studies academically. And then some are from the UK, from Western educational background. And so there are, different types of students, if I can call it that, and how they engage with study of Buddhism in a university setting. So, and what I come across is because of AI, and they are using the tools, basically. And my question is, what are the skills that we need to actually teach them? So I've been kind of thinking about that. And because one of my interests, long-term interests being kind of pedagogies, my PhD thesis touched on a little bit about that as well. So in terms of traditional pedagogies, how monks and nuns in Myanmar study Abhidhamma, for example. So that's been kind of my motivational drive in order to kind of think about it, this topic a little bit more. So what I'm going to be presenting is basically drawing on my experience. I think it's not, perhaps. If you go to the next slide, I think we might just do that. So that's why I will be covering kind of issues that I observe in terms of my teaching setting and situation. And then I would like to briefly touch on a Buddhist model, drawing on a Pali Sutta, or the text that we find in Pali Canon. And then later kind of proposing my concluding thoughts, the skills that we need to kind of teach in the age of AI to our students. So just kind of a quick overview, starting with heritage students and Western kind of students with university education background. So some of my students, undergraduate students, they've gone through GCSE A-level, and then some are kind of coming from Hong Kong, for example, with university education in Buddhism or Buddhist studies. For them, obviously they have good academic practice and skills, but so what I mean by that is reading skill, writing skill, and so forth. So they are very good, and they have critical thinking. And they also are very familiar with secondary literature. So anything that, kind of academically kind of orientated works on Buddhism. So they are very familiar with that, and they are kind of critically approaching that. So keep that in mind, because the way that they use AI now, I think, is slightly changing, and the kind of things that I see also there is also changing. But they often lack in primary languages and sources. So the knowledge of, say, Pali texts or Tibetan texts, they don't have that. So what do they do in terms of when they use AI, for example? Sometimes what they do is that they might be able to kind of come up with a research questions or research area that they want to use. So they would try to kind of say, okay, I want to write an essay on karma, for example. What are the things that I need to be thinking about? So they are using it a little bit more proactively, engaging with these kind of questions and sources that they come up with. So I had a student last academic year, and she was using it very kind of more proactive way and thinking about and tailoring her research using just general ChatGPT kind of thing. One information that I should actually share is Oxford University this year in September gave all the staff, faculty members, and students their license for ChatGPT Edu. So for educational purpose only, you know, that platform. So we all can use it. And the university policy is that, as far as I know currently, is that if the course or the assignment actually is allowed to, is allowing the students to use AI, then they can use it. But they have to acknowledge how they are using it. So it's one of the policies, or one aspect of the policy. So which means that it throws up quite a lot of challenges as well, but also it brings a lot of benefit into, you know, academic practice. Going back to my students who was using this kind of more proactive way of engaging with AI, her essay actually turned out to be quite innovative, and also she did very well because she was really kind of thinking about the whole process, not just passively absorbing whatever that was kind of coming up. So that was a really interesting one. But I think to some extent, she's quite rare. So I also had other students who was kind of churning out really beautifully written, sometimes quite oversimplified version of essays. And me kind of sitting there and marking, reading through every word. And then after that, I felt quite cheated by them to some extent, because it's like I spend quite a lot of hours. I put my time in it to kind of give feedback. So I my kind of when I do the marking, I read every line basically. So that was kind of my experience with this kind of cohort. But then again, if we then look at people who come with monastic kind of traditional training and education, I would say that they, you know, like it's the opposite of what the skill set is kind of opposite, because they often lack in academic practice and skills. So English might be their third language or fourth language. So for them, it's very much kind of, you know, if they then put an article into the system, they then get a summary, and that's what they would be putting in the essays. So that kind of a very simplified way of using AI and engaging with AI I think it throws up quite a lot of different challenges, as well as for me and for them in the long run. Another one is that, of course, in terms of language skills, they are there because they might have Pali language, you know, they study Pali language for many years, for example, or Tibetan or any other. But it's lack of engagement with secondary literature. Like I said, it's AI actually helps to kind of, to some extent, get an idea of what the article, one source is saying. However, this is where I present kind of pros and cons in a way, just summarizing what I kind of said, but briefly. So you get a summary of a source, and which might throws up some analytical aspects. I've done that as a test with ChatGPT. You know, it's kind of quite good. because it goes into quite a lot of detail how we can think about a particular source, or you can even compare 2 articles or 3 articles, whatever that you might want to kind of ask it to do. But nuances are missing. One of the things is that because if you're focusing on 1 or 2 sources, or 3 sources even, it doesn't really give you how the scholarship has developed. So it's a problem. And especially for people who are from Asia with traditional educational background, for them it's even they can use AI to get one, kind of good summary of it. They won't get the whole picture. And that's a struggle that I see in my students. Another one is finding sources. So you can actually ask, okay, what are the scholarly sources on a given topic? And they will give you, it gives you that. But sometimes it's actually still missing key sources. So I will give you an example. If you Google, if you type in ChatGPT about the scholarship on dating of the Buddha, which is a big debate in Buddhist studies, but it will give you all the kind of well-known scholars' work. However, it doesn't really give you one of the latest discovery, which was Robin Cunningham's work on archaeological findings that came out 10 years ago. So it's not included in that, which actually overturns the previous scholarship. So that's just one example. Another one is kind of in terms of if you want to, it's very helpful in terms of getting Pali language, for example, Pali text and grammatical analysis that you might want. Its accuracy is high, but we cannot be certain. So there are certain terminologies or certain Pali words that it can't really kind of go into the etymology, and it might give you a round version of it. So what does that mean? It means that we still need to check manually and get a sense of, okay, in the Pali language, this is sort of right, or this is not quite accurate. So, it's like we need to kind of teach students in order to get to that level so that they can actually engage with AI system in that way. So essay writing, like I said, it's very good for, say, people who are from Asia, for example, with English language being third or fourth language. It will get them started, and then check grammar and things like that. So that kind of like leveling the playing field to some extent. However, again, what it does is it's like in-depth discussion. So these essays, they don't go in-depth discussion, and they can sometimes kind of give you a simplistic engagement with the topic. So that's what I'm seeing there. And then the final point is, in terms of research, yes, like I said, you can use it very kind of creatively to some extent. But my own kind of study, and so I work on one of the final texts of the Pali Canon, which is about causality, which is called Patana, and it's a very complex text, and there are over 40 billion questions that you can formulate based on that text. And one kind of example that I tried was, okay, how many questions can you formulate in this text? AI or ChatGPT found the right answer. However, and then I said, well, how do you get there? And then in terms of the processes. and it's kind of giving me very vague information which are not accurate, and so it's like it cannot explain the processes, because I've written, I worked on that topic for the past 2 or 3 years, and then I've got, I wrote a paper, I think 50 or 60 pages paper on it, and because I went through all the processes, but ChatGPT, you know, within kind of less than 1 minute, it's giving me all these information, which I haven't got time to read through and also process. So that's also another challenge that I for me personally, by the time that, you know, if I followed the prompt by ChatGPT, I had already forgotten what I started asking. So I mean, in terms of that, it's maybe I'm doing it wrong, perhaps, but that is my experience. So that's kind of all the things that I wanted to share in terms of, you know, my own experience, as well as drawing on my students' experience. Now I want to turn to the Buddhist model, which is, so if we think about one of our educational aim is to get the students to get to a very high level of expertise and engagement with a text or a tradition or a practice. According to the Pali Canon, this is one way that we can actually kind of engage with it. So it might be like a Buddhist model for scriptural learning. So and the text, this is a very standard phrase that we can find. So senior monks who are very learned or heard in such teaching, Dharma, remembering them, rehearsing them, reciting them, mentally scrutinizing them, penetrating them theoretically. So we have to bear in mind that this is within the scriptural learning, not in the context of the practice itself and realization. So it's not talking about that. It's mainly about scriptural learning. Then, I mean, that's why it's the translation there is theoretically. Otherwise, we would be talking about embodiment of the Dharma. But you can see here that it's very much kind of a process. And not only that, it's about remembering, which is a very important key element in Buddhist tradition, but I think generally in education as well, which normally in modern university setting, we don't give much emphasis on that in terms of remembering things. We think that is a lower level kind of mundane stuff, but I think it's very important that we practice that kind of mental exercise. Another one is recitation or rehearsing. Again, it's about kind of going back to a particular kind of topic or Dharma teachings and things like that, and then kind of mentally examining them. So this is a process which I think is very relevant to our students still, even in the age of AI. And you might be wondering why do we need to kind of ask them to remember stuff when they can kind of find out and Google it, as it were. Then because if they are actually aiming to get to master one kind of topic and understand them deeply, we need that process. We need that time and process to go through, which I feel like we're not getting there. And that leads to my kind of final concluding thoughts, which is that well-proven transferable skills are crucial now, even more so. So what do I mean by that? Say, if we think about languages, expertise in languages, it's still a crucial process. If you want to read Pali texts or commentaries or the Tibetan texts, language is also very important. Yes, in Buddhist studies, we have various projects kind of translating the text, and we might think that, okay, languages are not so crucial now because we can just kind of rely on AI. I would say otherwise. Kind of, yes. And then in-depth knowledge of text. So this is actually coming from my own experience, and I've been working on the text that I work on, the Patana. That one for the past 15 years or so, and the ability to kind of, one fun thing about working with the text and kind of being able to hold it in the mind or understand in the mind is that you can actually expand it out, and also you can condense it down, which is in Buddhist tradition that's fun. Because we have quite a lot of lists. You complain about lists, and we can expand it, we can condense it down, and it's a fun exercise, I would say. And if you are interested in that, you need in-depth knowledge. Research mindset. What do I mean by that? So in relation to that project that I've been working on, sometime, or rather, I really had to kind of manually search all the manuscripts still in order to find a problem that I want to resolve. So that's where research mindset is necessary, and that's where I think, as educators, we can do more to encourage students to be research orientated. And then reflexive approach to one's studies. This is about thinking, especially in the age of AI, when we engage with AI, we have to be thinking and asking, what am I doing? What is it that I want to achieve? And with Jonathan, we had a conversation just now that the kind of, maybe we need to be asking every day or every moment when we're using it. So that is about that. But I want to draw attention to the tensions that I kind of listed here, which is when we have speedy answer, because the speed is, and then, and information, but our mental processing power, are we not kind of, so I think there's a tension, kind of conflicting interest in there, because it's like we can get all the information within seconds, but we can only read so much in 1 second or 1 minute. Another one is multiple demands. So we are, if I understand LLM models, they are going kind of very wide. The breadth is kind of getting larger and larger and larger. But actually, if we want to encourage expert knowledge and skills, we need depth as well. So I think that breadth and depth is also, there's some kind of tension. And then another one is based on my observation of students who I encounter in university settings. There are students who are genuinely motivated to learn about a particular thing, about Pali grammar, for example. But there are students, sometimes even monks, who are more strategic in a sense that they are more kind of status orientated. So if they get a degree from Oxford University, for example, they might be able to go back and set up a a monastery or lead a community. And so that kind of strategic approach, that's what I mean. So this is really kind of personal at level. There's tension. So my concluding thought is that if we then kind of boil it down, while all the different things that I mentioned here, to one key quality, what would I teach to students? I would teach perseverance. So they really need to be persevering and putting a lot of time into the process, but also actually kind of bringing all these discussions into the classroom. So now I tell my students, okay, if you want to use AI, you need to tell me how you are using it. And then we get discussion in the classroom as well. And so that way of engagement is necessary. And rather than tiptoeing around the elephant in the room, it's like, okay, there's an elephant and you need to be looking at it and you need to engage with it. Otherwise, you're not going to be kind of actively involved in it. So because one of the worry for me is AI is actually taking out all the processes that we as students have to go through. And there's always a quick solution. In modern time, there's always kind of, always demand to get a degree, to get a temple, to get a community, and all these kind of things, even in Buddhist world, it's real. So that's why it's very important. Okay, I want to conclude here. Yeah, thank you.